Helen Berkun, welcome to Business News and Other Shit. How are you today?
I'm great. How are you?
Good, good. Now, is it a coincidence that your name Birkin happens to be the name of the most sought after women's handbag by Hermes in the world? Is that a coincidence? Don't lie to me. Or did you pick that name?
No, it's a coincidence. My name is actually spelled Berkun, unlike Jane Birkin. But I do love the last name. I have to say, this is my maiden name, and this is my work name that I just love. And I'm always telling my dad like how great our last name is, and my dad's like, and it's not very Russian, which is very shocking because
That's your
some
background,
people are
right?
like,
Russian.
that's my background. Yeah.
And technically, you were born in the Ukraine, you told me earlier, right?
Right. So I was born in the former USSR, and I say that because back then it was all one country, and
Right.
that's kind of where I'm from. So I speak Russian, and I always say I'm Russian, where technically when the country got divided, I am now from the Ukraine. But the part of Ukraine that I'm from sides more with Russia
Got you.
than they do
Can
with
you
Ukraine.
shed any light for us on why Ukraine always seems to be in the middle of weird shit with politics, with Trump, with whatever? Like, like why Ukraine? Why not Mongolia? Why not Uzbekistan? Why not some other random country? Why, do you have any insight on that? Why Ukraine?
I really don't, but I think probably because we're closest to Russia. I mean, we're right on the border, we're right on the line.
Which I
And
guess Russia is US's like arch nemesis in a way, right?
right, right. And I think that when it was USSR, I mean, it was one of the biggest countries, in the world. And I think that Uzbekistan and Mongolia and all these other countries, they always kind of tried to be separate. They've always had their separate languages, where Ukraine, even though it's kind of like, how Spanish is our second language here in the US. In the USSR, everyone spoke Russian, especially
Mm,
when it was during communism and during, when it was USSR. So I think that because Ukraine is just the closest and
that makes
closest in the
sense.
language and closest in the way we look physically, because when you go to Mongolia and people look much more Asian, when you go to Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan and some of those other countries, there's a lot of Muslims there and they're a lot darker skinned. So people just look different too. So they try to kind of be separate, where I think between Ukrainians and Russians, you really can't tell the difference just by looking at
Right,
us physically,
right, right,
um,
right.
the difference between us, even though they're two different countries.
Makes sense. So the fact that Ukraine is so politically placed next to Russia, which we're always, as Americans, thinking about and breathing and worrying about Russia, that makes Ukraine a popular conversation piece in the United States because we're always trying to work with them to keep tabs on Russia.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. I mean, I'm not super like into politics or know a lot what's going on. I just kind of hear from my parents and stuff like that. Plus, you got to remember, I came here as an 8-year-old, so I really am American,
Yeah,
more and more. Although I am so culturally attached to my roots and where I come from. So
yeah.
it's a funny balance, because as American and patriotic as I am about this country, I am still very connected to my roots being Russian. My kids speak Russian. My husband is from Belarusian, and somehow I ended up marrying a guy from where I'm from.
Did you say he's Belarusian?
Belarusian, so
Oh,
he's from
Belarus.
Belarus. Yeah.
Ah, got it.
But once again, we all, as kids, were raised in one country, which was USSR. So all of
In
us
your
speak
mind, yeah.
Russian, but now we're like from different countries. It's kind of crazy.
I'm gonna
Whereas
close
for
this door 1 second, Helen.
sure, sure.
I got coolers and freezers in this restaurant making super loud sounds, so I apologize.
Oh, no problem.
So my wife is a wonderfully beautiful, smart, artistic woman. All right. I make a joke sometimes that I was so I've learned so much from her about beauty and appreciation for beauty, at least visual outward beauty. And I make a joke sometimes and I say my wife's got a PhD in beauty. You know
Oh,
what I
that's
mean?
so
I
sweet.
believe she does. I'm not even kidding you. I've never met anyone like her. It's such a beautiful gift. She's a visual artist. She makes all sorts of canvas paintings, and just talented human being. I'm looking at you, and I think seeing kind of your jewelry on your hand there, and the jewelry around your neck, and how watching your Instagram profile, and how you take such good care of yourself, your skin, I'm like, man, this woman has found a powerful way to take her expertise in beauty and use it for her personal business benefit.
Sure.
I want to learn, I want to understand how you did that, or what you're doing and how you did that, because I think that's really valuable. And then I'm going to tell my wife, your wife, Linda, you need to listen to this podcast. I think this wonderful woman named Helen has figured some shit out.
So I think I learned a lot of my tips and tricks. My background, actually, I started out as a fashion photographer and celebrity stylist. And so I never thought that I would be an influencer or a beauty expert or any of that, right? I started when I was 18 years old, had no idea what really I was doing. This is before Instagram or anything. I'm 40. So it's like before social media, And I basically grew up on set working with some of the best hair and makeup artists in the world. And I think I learned so much from them. And how, when Instagram started, I think it started in like 2010, 2011, I was one of the first piloted people that started using it. I think I was one of the first like 200 users to use it. And which is funny because I don't have like such a huge growth. But I remember when it started, I really didn't know what I was doing. I mean, I was posting 10,000 times a day, just kind of like my day. And I noticed that once people started following me and found out who I was, they would see that I would be on set. And, it's different what I did for a living. People don't understand that world, right? Like they don't know about the behind the scenes stuff. So I would post that, and that's how I grew a following, and that's how I learned everything. And so now where I am today, I, feel like a lot of the people that started following me back in 2010, I mean, this is like 10 years later, have evolved and grown with me. And so they've matured into these women that started out maybe in their 20s or even in their teens. And now they're in their 30s and 40s, where we are taking care of our skin more. We do have to, because I mean, back in the day, I didn't do any of that. I'd sleep with makeup on and whatever.
Wow.
So I think that's kind of how I became so-called expert. I just grew up on a set.
Yeah, you knew it because you were trained in it and you were working in it every day.
Right.
And then you're like, yo, I can help other people and impact other people's lives by having a platform to do this. And that was obviously so one of the first couple hundred in Instagram. Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah, isn't that crazy? I mean, I remember when Instagram came out, I didn't even know really what it was.
I still don't know what the hell Instagram is.
But it's funny, like if you are into social media, which I've been from the very beginning, I don't know if you know this, but the first social media platform before MySpace was actually a platform called Friendster. And I was on that. Do you remember that? Were you ever on that?
I was never on it. I barely remember Friendster. MySpace, I definitely remembered.
Yeah.
So I was always like, can you imagine being the person who came up with MySpace?
Right.
And you were before Facebook, and you still fucked it up.
I know. It's a bummer. It's a bummer.
It goes to show you, all these people who have like, you ever meet these people who are like, I got the best idea in the world, and I'm not going to tell anyone. It's like, it don't matter. Even if you have the best idea like MySpace did, or Friendster, what really matters is like, can you execute?
Can you execute it? Right. That's so funny. It's so true.
So true. It don't matter. You can tell everyone your secret or whatever.
Absolutely.
So were you on Friendster?
So I was on Friendster, and this is like in 1998. And what it was just a platform where you would write. You would talk to people, reply to people, and write. So there was no photos, nothing. You were just talking. And back then, I worked for ABN AMRO. I worked at a bank. I hated every moment of it. But I worked there because they paid for my school.
Yeah, it's a big Dutch bank, right?
ABN AMRO was Harris, and then it was bought out and became ABN AMRO.
Right. I have a former career as a Wall Street banker.
I know.
ABN AMRO was my client for many years.
That's amazing. And so I worked there, which I never fit in and I never belonged. But It was great, as far as, health insurance and things like that. I mean, I was in college and my dad sort of raised us to always be independent and, we're immigrants. And so it wasn't like, we'll pay for your school, do whatever you want. I paid for my school and did everything on my own. So I got a job at a bank because I knew that they were going to support sort of, my education and my insurance and everything. The benefits were phenomenal.
Mm.
So I remember working at the bank and being on Friendster like half the time, talking to people instead of doing my work. But it was great. Yeah. So that was like my kind of
In Chicago?
in Chicago, in the city on Clark Street.
What did you do at ABN AMRO?
I was a teller. I was a senior teller.
Oh, I got
And then my parents were dying for me to become a personal banker. And truthfully, I hated wearing pantyhose. And I would get in trouble all the time for what I would wear. And that I was too bright and too colorful and, not banky enough and not conservative enough. And I was like, you know what? Screw this. When I was done with school, I pursued, actually, even in college, I would say like my senior year, I left and I started my own business, Misread Inc., which is the name of my company. And I was like, I'm going to do this. And my parents supported me. Of course, they would have preferred for me to be probably an attorney or a doctor or a banker or anything else but what I pursued, because no one did that. No one pursued that. And so, but they supported me and I did it. And I'm so glad.
God bless them. That's good parents right there.
Yeah.
One of the hardest conversations I had with my parents. I had two very hard conversations with my parents. The first one was after my first semester at the University of Chicago in college, when I had to sit them down and say, Mom, Dad, I don't want to be a doctor. And it just like broke their heart.
Yeah.
Like, this is our smart kid. This one, we ate really well while he was in the womb and we delivered him really well. And this one's got a shot, and I'm like the one who was like, no, I don't want to be a doctor. I'm sorry. And that was so hard. The second hardest conversation I ever had with my parents was after 10 years on Wall Street. I was moving up quickly and I'm like, Mom, Dad, I don't want to be an investment banker anymore. They're like, why are you problems for us? And I'm just, and the big shocker was like, no, I want to be a comedian. And they did not laugh at that at all.
No, I'm sure they didn't.
No. So I feel you on the immigrant parent thing, but I tell you what, like they really did support me when I didn't want to be a doctor. And my dad got so proud of me being an investment banker and just brag about me all the time. And so, and then doing comedy, he started looking up all his old friends from college. Some of them went into acting and comedy. He started like connecting me with them and like showing me how they've become famous and they become successful. So like they always found ways to be like, wait, maybe this is a really good thing my son is doing.
That's so sweet.
Right?
And your parents are immigrant. You were born here, correct?
Absolutely. I was born here. You were not born here, but I was born here.
Yeah.
Yeah, my dad, we're Palestinian, so we got the very difficult end of the whole Middle East situation. We also did not have status, so my dad immigrated to the United States in order to get citizenship somewhere, and fortunately we got it here. My wife had an even tougher problem. Her family went to Dubai, and in Dubai, it's not like the U.S. They don't give citizenship to anyone unless you're a native local.
Yeah.
So she got into a raffle, I guess, or like
yes, a lottery. We did that. I know what you're talking about.
For Canada, not even for the US, for Canada.
I know exactly what you're talking about because my mom got it for her best friend for Canada.
There you go.
It's a green card lottery in order to get status and citizenship somewhere. Yeah. Exactly. So we have the same story as your parents. I mean, we were also refugees. So no status, you give up your whole life and you just go.
Isn't that something? My dad tells a story, and I have it as a joke in my stand-up sometimes. He'd say, and God rest his soul, he's passed away now.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Thank you. He would say, I came to this country with nothing but this shirt on my back. And to the day he passed, I swear to you, this man wore no pants.
I love it.
Whitey tighties all the way. So it's kind of a cheesy joke to get people excited about, like, my dad and everything. But yeah, that's kind of the immigrant story. in America with a lot of people, you know?
Yeah. And it's crazy because when you leave your country and come back, well, leave in general and go wherever you go as a refugee. I don't know if you know this, but you are only allowed to take certain things. You are only allowed to have a certain amount of money. Like my parents came in their 30s with 2 kids, and then my dad's parents or my grandparents, and $2,000. No language, no nothing. Like, can you imagine like packing your entire life and just taking that kind of chance? I always wonder. I mean, I was very um, little when it happened, but it's crazy to think about it now that I have 3 kids. I could never do that.
We're so spoiled. I mean, we grew up
We're
so
so spoiled.
spoiled and privileged. That's what it
Yeah,
is.
yeah,
So okay, so you've taken this privilege and this wonderful experience your parents have gifted you, and you've turned it into an awesome following on Instagram. And
yep.
so okay, so how do you what is like what is it like to actually influence people? Like, do you feel a sense of power? Do you feel a sense of support? Like, what does it mean to you, and how do you actually, you know, make the day to day happen?
Yeah. So first and foremost, I feel a sense of responsibility. So I think it's very important that my voice has a reason and a meaning, and for people to like relate to me. And I also have a sense of responsibility because I know all types of people follow me. They come from all sorts of financial backgrounds. They are come from all sorts of backgrounds as far as their age demographic. So I try to be very careful as far as what I put out. And I think most influencers do. It's very curated. And I also guided what I put out based on my following. So most of my following are women. A lot of them are mothers. And I
But you
have to
said most.
say, during,
Are there actually some men who follow you, like for the purpose of beauty?
I don't just talk about beauty. I talk about everything from travel, lifestyle, cooking. I do a ton of cooking. Uh, Family. So yeah, I'm 25% of the demographic are men.
Yeah.
Probably some of them are following me just because of what I look like, and I'm completely aware of that. I get some kind of creepy messages time to time, and I'm like, block, block, bye. But there's a lot of men that follow me that are single dads that are interested in my family and my kids and raising them. During COVID, I actually grew such a big following because people were telling other people about me in the community, sort of in the Chicagoland area. In Boston, I got a lot of people because people were so enthralled in Instagram and social media, watching a lot more views on stories. And I made it a point to teach people something. So my first order of business was school, how to do e-learning with 3 kids. I had no help. My husband was going to work every day. So I was completely by myself. My kids age range from 4 years old to 12 years old. So I have a teenager and a toddler, which is like a complete shit show. And I made a schedule. I try to stick to the schedule. I try to help other people how to make this happen.
Mm.
And I did cooking and stuff like that. So I have all kinds of people following me, not just women, because I feel like what I bring to the table is not just makeup. It's not just beauty, although there's a lot of that. But during really hard sort of times when we were in quarantine, it wasn't so much about that. If it was about beauty, it was like, how do you dye your hair without going to salon? How do you like keep your skin from breaking out? How do you do your nails? How do you do things on your own? Because I am a true believer that you as a human being are capable of doing everything. Like I always say, doing it in 24 hours or less, because I think that yes, you can, buy all these things and do all these things, but not everyone has the financial privilege to do so. And so
Right.
it's my job as a person that didn't come from money at all, to show them that you can do things on your own. And I think like a lot of people have this misconception that I'm just like bathing in money and I'm so wealthy. And I think a lot of it is just the background I come from, editorial background. And so I like things a lot more posh and lavish. But the truth of the matter is I came from nothing. I came
Mhm.
from immigrant parents, and I got here because of who I am and working hard. And that's always the underlining message behind what I do.
That's interesting. So, okay, I'm seeing the trajectory from ABN AMRO basically almost getting fired for what you were wearing
Yeah.
to, moving into a place of like, no, let me be me and, buy the things I love to buy, show the things I love to show, wear the things I love to wear. I see that journey. Do you ever get judged like in some of your messages? I know you get the creepy dude messages. Do you ever get any messages of like people judging you
Yeah.
in a way where they're like, hey, um, beauty isn't everything, or lifestyle isn't everything, or like, the way you're living, people who judge you for your lifestyle or your choices. Do you ever get any of those kind of messages? And do you engage those people?
Very rarely, very rarely. I'm fortunate that my following is just so fantastic and great and supportive. Yes, of course. Sometimes I get those messages. I just got a message not too long ago, and I always reply to those messages. I reply to every message that comes in, and I always reply with a place of kindness and respect. And I think a lot of people will sometimes will come in from a place of attack, and I
Mm.
always come from a place of kindness. I'm always one of those people, kill them with kindness. Like, let's talk about what bothers you about me. Let's talk about why you're saying these things. And I'm very openly can talk about anything. I'm an open book. I'll tell you anything you need to know. So I have very thick skin. Growing up the way I did and being in the business for so many years, nothing really bothers me. You can call me what you want. You can say what you want. It doesn't bother me. And so I'm open and willing to talk about any of those things and find out why you are being so angry or judgy or whatever it is. You know what I'm saying? Like, we could talk about it. And I love to change people's minds about me. It's like a challenge, and I like it.
Hmm. Okay, so let's talk about it. So let's talk about. I think beauty is the one that's the biggest challenge in our society. Meaning, like, I believe women have a lot of pressure in our society because of the way our culture's set up. In particular, what I mean is um, Instagram, especially by successful Instagram influencers like yourself, will post in a way where they curate it particularly well. Okay. And you're especially well suited for this because you have expertise in beauty, in um, um, makeup, like you said, like what the celebrity makeup artists can do is amazing. A
Absolutely.
celebrity walks in with a certain face into the makeup trailer, they walk out like they're ready to hit the Oscar red carpet, right? So that has we I don't think you'll deny that the way our culture is currently set up, it has a big impact on women. I have a daughter and I have a girl on the way as well. And
Oh, yay.
I know we're so excited and I'm so excited. And I gotta tell you, Helen, I love my daughter so much. I mean, it's become this um, heart-filling daily experience that I have with her, and it's like sometimes when I'm sitting there, I just want to start crying. I just love her so much. It's beautiful. I feel so
Yeah.
blessed. And she's gonna pick up Instagram in a few years, if not 5 or 10 years, and she's gonna see like flipping through, Helen Berkun's page and be like, I guess I have to look like this in order to be successful, in order for people to like me. And so here we are in this peculiar time where there's a lot of pressure on women. And so, you know, do you see yourself as contributing to that in a bad way, in a good way, in both ways? Have you thought about this? How do you feel about all that? And what does that impact your behavior on how you post and so on?
Absolutely, absolutely. I think about it all the time. I have two daughters and a son, and I like to think that I want to raise my kids. First and foremost, everything comes in the house. I'm a true believer of that, with self-confidence, self-worth, self-respect. And my kids are on Instagram already, the older kids, and on TikTok, and it's crazy. It's challenging, right? I always very openly talk on my Instagram. I always say that my feed, which is my static images, the still images that you see on my grid, are curated editorials because of where I come from. So if you followed me for a long time, you know I come from publishing and editorial. I know how to pose. I know how to take a great picture. My background is in photography. I've worked with some of the best models in the business. And so I know those things. And I always openly say, don't just look at my feed and be like, oh my God, she's perfect and fabulous. Because when you go to my stories, and if you really follow along in the journey, you know the reality of it, that I'm not always put together. A lot of times I'm a mess. I'm very open about that. And I think it's important to talk about those things. And I have actually a lot of younger kids that follow me as well, like teens, my friends' daughters. And I do feel like a sense of responsibility to make sure that they don't think that everything's perfect. They understand that Instagram is fake. Social media is fake. It's not real by any means. And I think where I come in is try to teach them, for instance, how to do makeup. So I do like makeup tutorials, or how to teach you, now that everybody's doing Zoom, how to properly dress for Zoom if you have an interview or anything else. My kind of place in the social media world, if you will, is to teach people, to educate them. It's not so much that I ever want them to look at me and feel bad about themselves, right? I don't want you to walk away feeling like, oh God, she's perfect, everything's perfect, because I openly say that nothing is perfect. And I also always say, if you're following anyone that makes you feel not good about who you are, you should just click on follow. That is not a person that's doing anything for you. And that could be me. And I am completely okay with that, because there's people that I feel that way about. Sometimes I follow them and I'm like, oh, I'm just not feeling good watching this channel. You should always feel good. Should be a sense of entertainment or knowledge, or you should get something out of it, but you should never get something out of it that makes you feel bad.
Right.
And I tell the same thing to my daughter. My younger one is too young, she's 4, but my middle daughter, I always say, I'm like, don't try to be like anyone on social media. Don't try to be like anyone else. Try to be you, but better. Try to be you in the most elevated way. You are the most, like I always tell my kids, you're the smartest, you're the most beautiful, you're the greatest, and you're a powerhouse, right? Like you can do anything you put your mind to. And I also like have an interesting story. So when I was younger, I was very ugly. Like when I say ugly, I mean ugly. I was made fun of in school. In 4th grade, like we came here as immigrants. I had no money. I dressed like shit. Like everybody made fun of me. I wore my older brother's clothes. I wasn't cute. And I think part of the motivation of why I sort of like got so into beauty and so into fashion was, I remember being a young girl to a teenager and saying, when I grow up, I'm going to be beautiful. I'll show them. I'll be able to like afford and do stuff. And so I would go to like, Goodwill and pick out pieces and style them myself and make my own clothes, because of that insecurity of people making me feel bad for being an immigrant, not having money, not looking a certain way. I went to high school, everybody wore Abercrombie Fitch. My parents couldn't afford that. I didn't wear any of that stuff. I wore whatever I could find, right? And I made my own style. I just think that it's important. But my parents always told me that I was beautiful. I was the smartest, even though I wasn't any of those things. And I feel like that's so important, is to teach your kids those things. And also to teach your kids that doesn't define who they are. It's better to be educated and to be beautiful on the inside, and to capture people with your light than with just a visual aspect of who you are.
Do you do some of that inner cultivation on your stories or on your...
Absolutely. I feel like I always try to like encourage people and make people feel powerful for just being human beings. And I get like messages sometimes from people, especially like I said, during COVID, because I think it's just so fresh. During quarantine, I mean, so many moms would message me thanking me for allowing them to sort of giving them the ambition and the drive to keep going, making them feel like they could handle this, that they can do this, making them feel beautiful with my like tutorials that they learn to do this and that. Yeah, I try to do that. I want to embrace humans and people and make them feel beautiful and powerful from within. And I think when you have that, it just shines out. I mean, I post pictures sometimes of myself as a teen and a kid, and people are like, wow, that's you. I'm like, yeah.
You're showing them the journey and the truth. Okay, that's cool.
I mean, yeah.
Wow, that's powerful. Okay, well, I honor you for that. It sounds like you have a healthy self-awareness around, the impact of what your work can do, especially when you say, yo, if what I'm doing in my efforts to make the world a better place or make my followers a better people isn't working, you need to hit unfollow on me.
I say that all the time. I actually just had this conversation on a story the night before last night. There was a woman that is not a follower of mine. I said something, so I had the COVID test done for antibodies and to see if I have current COVID, because back in February, long story short, I was really ill for like a month. I'm actually convinced I had it, but the antibodies didn't show up. And so I did one snippet video and I said, I didn't have COVID. I didn't have antibodies. I'm so upset about it. I wish I did. And so, of course, this 15-second snippet gets taken completely out of context. And this woman who has quite a following, she's a female entrepreneur. She owns a business, which I support, especially in a minority. Like, I support female businesses majorly, and post this on her channel. So I'm starting to get hit like, you dumb, stupid girl, like you're an idiot, you're brainless. Of course, look at you, you're so pretty, rich girl, brainless, wishes she had COVID. And I'm like, people, this story spans from February. So I made a public statement, A, saying that if I bother you, you should unfollow me. And B, kind of explaining myself and telling the story that I had what seemed like COVID in February. And yes, I do wish I had the antibodies, because
Right.
it would sort of give me some answers, right?
Right.
Which I still don't have. And then people were apologizing to me and actually starting following me because I was saying all these things. You know what I'm saying? So like,
Yeah.
Instagram is such a tricky thing. It's like, if you watch a story or a snippet for 15 seconds, you really have no idea who this person is. And I think right now, where we are in the world in general, the country is so divided. The world is so divided. People are seeing black or white. There's no gray areas. And I always say, the world is not black and white.
Right.
There's the beautiful gray moment in between where we all must come together and see that and understand that. And no change can happen unless you do that.
Yeah, I think a majority of things are not black and white. Very rare.
Never.
I mean, there's some obvious things that are, from a moral perspective, that are black and white, very obvious.
Sure.
But the majority of everyday things are just not black and white. Even like if you're thinking about business or family or raising, it's just not black and white.
Right.
Okay, cool. So you said something twice now that I had to write down. I come from an editorial background. I know how to post. Now, I think I know what that means, because I think I know what editors do, but I don't know if I fully understand it, and I bet a lot of people listening or watching have no idea what you mean when you keep saying that.
Oh,
So
sure.
help us understand that, and help us understand, does that help you? Well, I mean, the follow-on question is, how does that help you make money as an Instagram influencer if you're able to?
Yeah, sure. By the way, my son is playing the piano, and I hope that the sound doesn't bother you guys.
I barely did.
Okay, perfect, great. So I come from, I started out as a fashion photographer and celebrity stylist. And so my job entailed being on set and either styling or shooting myself and shooting models. So like all the pictures that when you open a magazine and you see the fashion layouts, I did all of that. So that's what I did for 20 years. That was my bread and butter.
Okay, so you're saying, I see what you're saying. You're saying almost like, yo, if you think Instagram is a bad impact on culture because everyone thinks you got to be perfect like Instagram, we've already had that before. It was in Vogue magazine. It was in all the Cosmopolitan magazine. You open it up and it tells you need to look this way in order to be successful or to be liked. And so
Totally.
it's now moved it online is kind of, and so what you were doing was you were taking the picture with the camera and you were telling them how to wear it and how to be, and then you would take that and would you actually place it in a magazine?
Right, so it would be in a magazine. So I was the fashion editor at large for Sheridan Road. I worked for CS. I worked for numerous publications. I was published in Vogue. I've done like all kinds of stuff. So that's my background. So being an influencer is just a happy accident, I say. It's kind of like the new career that I have now, but that's not where I came from.
Got
And
it.
so when I say that that's the world I lived in and that's the world I worked in, it really is. I worked, behind the scene with fashion models and celebrities and things like that. And so I learned posing, because think about it, when you're working on set, you're in a studio and you're watching a model pose for, our regular days are 10 to 12 hours. It's not an 8-hour day.
Right.
And so I learned all the posing and all the makeup and all that stuff working on set. And
Yeah.
that's what I did for 20 years. And so what I say is, I know how to pose, I know light, because that's all I did for 20 years.
Got it. So it's the posing, it's the light, it's
Of course, it's everything. It's the makeup, it's the hair, it's the light, it's the clothes, it's the posing. There's an art director, there's an editor, there's a photographer, there's a lighting technician. I mean, there's a whole crew and slew of people taking these photos and making them what they are, right? Like when you see them in a magazine.
Are you doing that as a one-man show, as a one-woman crew? Is that what you're doing?
Right. So I don't do that anymore. So when I did that back in the day,
I mean, now that you're doing some of
for my
that.
Instagram, I'm a one woman show. I do have my kids taking my photos a lot of times, the older
No
kids.
way.
Yeah, and I taught my mom photography, so my mom shoots a lot of my photos.
Get
And
out.
my husband shoots some of my photos, but it always ends up being an argument and a fight because he hates it. He's like, I'm not an Instagram husband. I'm not a photographer. I'm not into this. Don't
But
ask me.
it's cool that you do it though, right?
Oh yeah, he's cool that I do it. I mean, this is what I do, meaning like I make money doing it. It's my job.
All right. So
So
then
when the money comes in, you can't argue about it. It's not a hobby.
business news and other shit. So let's talk about some of the other shit. So okay, so how do you make money as an influencer, and did it start right away?
Absolutely did not start right away. Took many years. And the way it started, like I said, I was getting a following, and then brands started noticing me and were asking me to, promote this brand or this brand or this brand with like very little pay, sometimes no pay. They would just gift me the items. And once again, rewind to the fact that I was still working on set and doing all the styling and photography and whatnot. I would find myself like coming home, or if I was staying at a hotel, coming to a hotel. So I'd have like a 10-hour day, and then I'd have to put in 4 or 5 hours into the blog or something else, or find a time to photograph. And so I was almost having 2 jobs, so it was really getting difficult. And I had my 3rd child, and honestly, when I did the styling and photography, you're traveling a lot. Not a lot of work is in Chicago. So you're really living in hotel rooms. And so it was really difficult having 3 kids, not being home, trying to juggle this blog and influencer thing that I didn't really know much about. And those things started coming in. And then business really started to shift and change also as far as the photography and styling went. A lot of work was mostly in LA, and you would have to move or just fly out there. And so I decided to leave Ford. I was represented by Ford Model Management on their artist board. And I decided to leave Ford and try to pursue, because more work was coming in as an influencer, to pursue it full time. And so for the past 3 years, I've done this full time. And it's kind of, there's a huge business aspect of it. There's a huge creative aspect and a business aspect. And I think for me, because I came from already this background, I already had a lot of contacts and connections to PR and showrooms and designers. People knew who I was as a stylist and photographer. I almost had like one foot in the door.
Yeah.
And I messaged everybody and said like, hey, I'm pursuing this full time. I'm doing, I'm now an influencer. So I'm your model per se, right? And I'm promoting brands, and things started coming in, and that's how I started working. So my day to day really is, sometimes I pitch. If things are slow, I pitch brands. If I have ideas or things like that. Otherwise, brands will come to me. There's a ton of contracts. There's lots of Zoom meetings, conference calls. You always do like a deck. I don't know if you know a deck. So you put together like a deck, and you figure out what the brand, either you come up with the deck or they come up with the deck of what the outcome they want to look like. And then you have to do like a day of shooting. Usually I'll have 1 to 2 days a week that I just shoot content and then release it.
Got it. Okay, wait. So let's go back a step. So you you'll reach out to the brands and kind of say how you can possibly help them, or vice versa. They'll pick up on you and they'll reach out to you. And then you
Yep.
said there's a lot of contracts. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
What do you mean by there's a lot of
So the
contracts?
contract will state in there, for instance, the date the post must be released. It could be an Instagram post, it could be a video, it could be a blog post, or it could be all. Or maybe it's an appearance. Maybe you're hosting a gig. So I'll give you all the dates and all the facts about what you will be doing. There's the monetary aspect of how much are you getting paid. Like I have a rate. So I have a rate card that I send out to brands. If the brand comes to me, this is what we want you to do, how much will it cost? I'll send in. And then so you're negotiating also the prices and the rates and things like that. Sometimes you meet right away and it's fine. Sometimes there's negotiations. You come too high, they come too high, low, you know what I mean? Same, just like a business transaction. And that's basically your contract, your binding contract. So we'll have the date, the time of when the post goes live. It's all in there. And most of the time, that now by the influencer will put ad, sponsors, partner, any of those words in the caption in order, and that's how the viewer, the follower will know that this is sponsored content.
Right. To be transparent and just to,
Absolutely.
okay,
Yeah.
that makes sense. Um, okay, cool, cool. So and now you've been doing it full time for 3 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I noticed your following is it's like in the 20,000s, right? So you're not
Yeah.
like
It's like 28,000.
28.
I'm what's called a micro influencer.
I'm sorry?
I am what's called a micro influencer.
Oh, even at 28,000, that's still micro.
I think I'm starting to now over 25 is like the other tier, but I always say like micro influencer. I feel like when you get to, I don't know exactly the demographic and the breakdown. But I, I actually work more sometimes I think as a micro influencer than some of my friends who are in the 60s.
Really? You think so, huh?
I think so sometimes, yes.
I think there's a
I
bit
think
of
it's
hustle that you seem to have, maybe from your background, that I bet people in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s may not have. I got to tell you, on Wall Street, everyone would always be shocked that I would pull down some big numbers in my business, and they're like, "Who's this dude, Amr Abdullah? Blah blah blah." He just walked in one day, and I grew up in a small business. I grew up in a grocery store and a restaurant. I know how to hustle. I
yeah.
have an immigrant background. And so I'd be one of the top guys, I think partly for that reason. And then there was a bunch of other non-immigrant, your average white person or, more privileged person, more privileged background. And they would just look at me and be like, how are you doing it? I wonder if some of that's playing into your success.
100%. I am a hustler through and through. I'll tell you a story. So my dad is an entrepreneur. My brother is an entrepreneur. I'm an entrepreneur. And my dad always said, I never want you to be a woman that depends on a man's paycheck.
Boom.
And yeah. And so I knew that I always had to make sure that I was gonna, you know, be able to take care of myself, my children. And so I'm definitely a hustler. If I'm not making money, I get really like pissed. Like I have slow times and those are my pitching times. I definitely am driven a lot by money too. I like success. I also don't ever want to disappoint my parents still in my 40s. Like I chose this career. I chose not to have a steady paycheck, right? But I think it's because I love the hustle. Like I really like the challenge.
Mm.
I love the contracts. I love being my own boss and not, you know what I mean? I like making my own schedule, but I'm always working. Like I'm always working no matter what. I'm always trying to land a deal. I'm always thinking of what I can do next. I'm always thinking of who I can pitch that I really want to work with. I always set goals. So yeah, I'm definitely a hustler for sure.
Tell us about the moment where you realized, oh shit, I'm doing this for real. Like, tell us about that contract that you got, and you're like, I didn't expect to get paid X thousand. To whatever extent you're willing to share the dollar amounts or the names, whatever keeps it confidential for you, but still helps us see your story and your success in that one moment where it was crystal clear to you, I'm on a new level right now and I'm doing this.
So when I was 19, so my cousin, who I call my sister because we literally like grew up together, I don't even feel like we're cousins, was a model. And long story short, she didn't show up to a shoot for Akira. Have you heard of Akira?
Yeah.
Okay. So she doesn't show up to a shoot because she's hungover and partied too much the night before. And it was like a 5 a.m. sunrise shoot. It was her and another model. And the photographer's pissed. Akira's pissed. Everyone's mad. And she's like, listen, don't worry. My sister is a photographer. She'll shoot this for free. So she calls me and she's like, you got to shoot this. And I'm like, I don't really know what I'm doing. I'm like 18, 19 years old. I'm like, for a brand, I'm like, I don't really know she's like, you got this, you got this. And I met John Cote, who was one of the founders of Akira. And we like hit it off. I killed it on this shoot. And then I became their creative director and would like do all these crazy things that I can only dream about. Like all their photo shoots, all their ad campaigns. I produced all their fashion shows. And I mean, I'm a kid, right? I'm not even like 20 years old. And I started making money, and it was really, really great money for me at that time. I don't remember how much I made, maybe like $800, like every 2 weeks or something like that. But back then, like I still lived at home, like it was great. And I got to learn and do what I wanted to do. But then John, because he worked with so many brands.
Who's John?
John Cote is the founder of Akira, one of the founders. There's three. And he was a buyer. He would buy for the store, all these huge, huge brands. So he worked with this brand, Hazel and Belle, and he introduced me to them, both in California. And he's like, she should be your photographer. She should shoot lookbooks and ad campaigns for these brands. So I fly out to Malibu to do this shoot for a brand that's carried at Nordstrom. I'm like 19, 20 years old. I mean, this is huge. And I remember they paid me $7,000. And like back then, this is like crazy money. They paid for my flight. They put me up in a fabulous hotel. They got me a car to rent. I mean, I've never had. That's when I knew. I was like, okay, I like just made it. This is amazing. And not only that, I would like see my images on billboards or in magazines. You know what I mean?
Right?
It was cool. That was cool.
What now fast forward 15 years or 17 years or whatever, where was that moment on Instagram for you when you stumbled upon a large contract and you're like, oh shit, I didn't know I was gonna, or maybe you didn't have that moment with Instagram, maybe it was just a slow build?
Yeah, so with Instagram, it's totally different. It was so slow and steady. I feel like the first moment, I was really scared, to be honest, to leave my agency. I mean, I made crazy money at one point, like crazy money. That kind of money doesn't exist anymore because after 2008 and the crash, I mean,
Right.
everything changed. But we used to work from like, I don't know, 8 a.m. to 2 p.m., smoke cigarettes on the job and just like party. I mean, this was like really fashion time in New York, and you would make like 10 grand a day. Like it was insane money.
Right.
With Instagram, it was different because no one after that whole crash was ever throwing money the way they did back in the day. And I'm sure you know this,
Yep. Same
being
thing.
on Wall Street. It was like night and freaking day. I went from making like crazy, you know, six figures to kind of like making, I think at one point I made in 2008, 2009, I think I made $28,000 for the entire year. And I had a son. Like I had no money. And so with Instagram, I feel like it was never like people weren't throwing money at you. So it was like very steady climb. And what I thought that I would do is, first of all, I have a photography background. I have no overhead. I don't have to pay a photographer.
Right.
I don't have to pay a stylist. I don't have to pay a model. I don't have to have any overhead like a lot of influencers do, which I think helps me a lot because all the money I take in is my money.
Right.
And I left the agency, so I wasn't sharing the 20% cut. So I think I just started elevating my rates as I was starting to grow in numbers. And when the first year after I left Ford, I made the same amount. I think it was like a couple of grand off that I did working for 10, 12-hour days in a studio, that's when I knew, okay, I made the right decision. I made it. Because what I do now involves my children. I'm at home. I'm not working 10, 12-hour days. I have the freedom to, run around, do stuff. My job now is my life. People want to see me living it, and I get paid for it, right? So it's a totally different concept.
I see it. I see it. That's crystal clear. That's powerful. Helen Berkins, not the Hermes Birkin's bag. Helen Berkin's the one and only. Thank you very much for jumping on this podcast with us.
Thank you for having me. It was so fun.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's do some plugs. So I think a lot of people are going to hear this and be like, "Yo, I want to follow this person or at least learn more about you." So where can they track you, follow you? Obviously on Instagram, it's Helen Berkins.
Yeah, so I'm very easy to find. My name, I don't have like a kitschy blog name, like pink anything. No, I am Helen Berkun. I decided that my brand is my name, and it's HELEN and B as in boy, ERKUN as in Nick.com is my website. My Instagram is Helen_Berkun. And same with Twitter, Pinterest, everywhere else. It has an underscore in between. But if you just Google me, you can find me.
Awesome. Thank you, Helen.
Thank you so much.
Nice to meet you. Bye-bye.
Bye.